Well, it looks like it's starting. Now we're started. All right, great. Well, I'd like to call tonight's management meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for coming, especially on short notice. I thought that it was important to get us together on a few topics that are timely, that we've discussed at our last management meeting, and I think it's timely for us to just fully form the discussions in some cases in order to move it forward. Again, so thank you for the short notice. The first item on the agenda tonight is organizational update. So I received notification, as you all did on Sunday night, that Chair Weeks has stepped down from the school committee. We certainly appreciate her service and wish her well. As part of our bylaws provide for the vice chair to step in and fulfill those duties for the remainder of the term until May elections. And so I've agreed to step in and do that. It would be my intention for us to elect a vice chair at our next full school committee meeting, so long as there's no one that has any different thoughts or objections or think that we should do that differently. There are some cascading changes, I guess, or just some things organizationally for us. One is, as I'm kind of step into this and do my best to try to have us organized as a school committee, I'm going to step down as chair of business and finance, and Ken Mills has agreed to take over business and moving forward. As he's doing that, he's not going to continue on as the chair of the superintendent eval. And Matt has expressed an interest to rejoin that committee and has agreed to serve as the chair for that. So those are the two kind of chair changes. What it does for us in terms of Megan's departure, it opens up a hole, I think, in legal affairs subcommittee. There's probably a hole that we need to fill in business finance. And so, I'm doing some outreach over the next few days to see if we can, I've asked some members about their interests. There may be, some newer members who are getting ramped up with us to see if we can plug those holes for the remaining 3 months before we reorganize as a committee. Let me stop there and see if there are any questions, thoughts, concerns that anyone wants to talk about organizationally. Nothing there. My intention tonight is to be fairly brief. I'd love to have us done by 8 or 8:15. You saw, what's on the agenda for tonight. The one other thing organizationally, I know that there's been some talk about the idea of having on the committee a parliamentarian. I'm not going to profess to be particularly strong in that area. I think that this year has been more active in that area than perhaps in years past. I'm certainly open to the idea of having somebody either on the committee or staff to the committee that could serve in that role if we think we need it. I'm also, certainly be open to the idea of let's see how the next few meetings go and circle back to that question. Any thoughts about a parliamentarian in particular?
I don't know if I ever thought about that. I'm sorry, Christina, go ahead.
No, you go, Ken. We're probably going to say the same thing.
Maybe. I know when Lance was chair, or right before he became chair, Mask offered a parliamentarian training course that he went to. So I don't know if they still do such a thing, but I don't know. It's just something that at one time existed.
So, and I guess we weren't going to say the same thing. I think that it's a good idea to see if there's any interest from the committee of someone who would want to take that role on. I think it would allow whoever's chair, you right now, to be able to really focus on the meeting and facilitating the meeting and not get bogged down with the questions of, is this something that I should do? You'd have someone at the ready to be able to answer those questions. And I think it also would take away from potential conflict that we might have, that I think I sensed in one or two of the meetings where the chair made a ruling. You have the parliamentarian to take that heat off, who's saying this is the objective answer. So I support maybe asking committee members if there's someone who would like to do that position.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just taking a note. So let's do that. And, Daryl, I'd ask the same of you. If there's somebody on your staff that has a particular interest in this area that thinks they could be helpful to the committee, it probably could benefit. And I think at this point, I'll be quite frank, I'm looking for all the help we can get. So if that's something that eases and helps us move over the flow of our meeting, then I'm all for it. So.
Sure. Well, I'll definitely reach out and see if anyone's interested.
Great. Thank you.
Mike,
Yes.
can I interrupt for a minute? When you said note, it reminded me about minutes. Is anyone taking minutes for this meeting?
I believe, Bob, do you have the minutes tonight?
Okay. All right. Usually
I'm on it.
Usually I get assigned the job, Bob, so thank you.
Yep.
Right.
No, Bob's been good enough to come on and take minutes tonight. Next item on the agenda, unless there's anything else on organization, seeing none. Next item on the agenda is kind of an update on our budget process. We had some discussions at the last management subcommittee meeting around the importance of having some discussion around budget priorities, and there were some ideas around how to do that. So, the administration did send out a Google form to inquiry about different budget priorities. I've asked Daryl and Brendan if they can lead us through a facilitated discussion at our meeting on Monday night around those budget priorities, and kind of the goal of that to me is to not only elicit what people see as budget priorities, identify common themes, highlight those things that are of particular import, and then weigh them against what's feasible and in the shorter term versus longer term. So that's the process that I hope for us to go through. What this means from a kind of laying this out is that we have 3 consecutive Mondays where we're going to be taking up budget as a primary piece of business, right? So we'll have that as a discussion item on this coming Monday. We'll have a budget hearing the following Monday, and then the week after that, look to have a budget that we can hopefully approve. But I wanted to ask Daryl and the team to kind of lay out the full budget process. Where we are, what's the roadmap look like, how are we integrating with the town schedule, and just make sure that we all have a common and full picture of what that looks like.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. So when we're looking at just the, let's just say a budget calendar per se, we're now going to push our budget hearing off to March 8th. This gives us time on this coming Monday, as Mike mentioned, to really work through a couple different ideas that Mike and I had thrown around. What we're going to we'll end up doing is using a Jamboard, and Director Keenan, Barry, and I were working on that a little bit this morning, pulling that together. And it's a Jamboard on Google is really it's a whiteboard, and you have sticky notes. And what we're currently doing is really organizing the comments that have come in associated with the 5 domains from the members, and we're putting those into various kind of screens. So that's a way we can start the conversation on Monday evening. In terms of kind of the overall calendar associated with what we're doing, I've already had 2 meetings with my executive staff, with Princeton and with Paxton, Monday night and Tuesday night. And again, those are just presentations associated with our initial kind of run at the budget. I can tell you that our numbers have come down. We shared those numbers with you. I think Randy shared those either yesterday or the day before in terms of our insurance. So we've gone from about 15% down to 9.5%. We found that out late last week. It's excellent news for us. It helps us. It brings us back down. By the time we were done, under 4%. And that's good news in that sense. I can tell you that in the past, let's say 5 or 6 hours, I've received 3 letters from 3 different town managers just saying that the increase that they've seen in terms of the town increase, their overall percentage was just too much for them to swallow. Those will all be shared with all of you through my report. As we kind of go through, that next step after the 8th, we'll have another budget approval on the 15th. So we'll have the hearing on the 8th, approval on the 15th, and then our town meetings all occur in May. And again, we'll see how we're able to come together. And as Mike mentioned, our goal is to have the school committee vote and support a budget by the 15th. If we can't do it on the 15th and it just takes too long, we do have another meeting scheduled for the 16th, which, and again, that would be another time when we would get back together, discuss the budget. And as many of you know who've been on the committee for a long time, we've had some times where we've had some pretty, I guess, not necessarily stressful, but long and arduous conversations about where we need to be with the budget. So I know we've had conversations at management a little bit over the past several months, and I really feel as though this is, a time for us to start thinking about just where we're at, what we need to do, and how we move forward. The 3.82% is probably not going to be something that we're going to get the 5 towns to support. At least 3 of them are saying they can't right now. And I think we're going to have to come back to the table and talk about that again. That'll happen while we kind of go through the process of looking at priorities and ultimately looking at a budget hearing and a vote on the 15th.
Thanks, Darrell. Any thoughts, comments, questions on the budget process going forward?
I have a question regarding the state numbers. When are they going to be solid? Are they solid, or I didn't think so? And when are we going to get those solid numbers? So you don't know.
No, unfortunately, it's worth the win on the state. So if they end up, they could end up voting on a budget and having the governor sign off on it, by June. I'm hopeful that it will be there by June. But again, we've been here and there's not a budget, and the new fiscal year has started. So I'm hopeful that it happens before that, Scott. But I'm not sure. And I think some of this is really dependent upon the stimulus package and when that actually occurs. So if that 1.9 trillion materializes, there's going to be a lot of money that's infused into the states. And I think that's going to play a role in what happens with some of the budget numbers. I can tell you, regional transportation, we're way down in regional transportation this year. That number's probably going to come up. Ken and I were we kind of went back and forth on that a couple of days ago about how the governor's numbers aren't always the final numbers. So there is a little bit of a back and forth by the time the governor signs off on the budget.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments? I mean, I guess I will. I'll state the obvious, right? There's kind of 2 counter forces that are acting at play here. One is, I think, a desire to understand what the model for school is going to look like for next year, and the other is that our towns are telling us that they cannot continue to take on the same level of increase that perhaps they've taken on the last couple of years in a row. So there's that dynamic. There's making sure that we have some alignment with the priorities of the school committee, and all of that needs to happen in the next 3 weeks. So it's a very, very compressed time frame. So we're going to want to make sure that we're, using our time the best way we can. We're having good, robust conversations, and that we're having hard but polite conversations, because I think that's what it's going to come down to as we come to a place of needing to have a budget that we're comfortable with, or at least willing to live with, and can agree to. Okay. Nothing else on budget. We'll move on to regional agreement. We added this back in. We had some discussion in our last management subcommittee meeting around this. We acknowledged, I think, in our last meeting that we were late in the game on starting this process. Certainly we've shared that there's been feedback from at least one town that's not interested in pushing this out to next year. Somewhat understandably so. I think there was also some conversation around in our meeting that perhaps it's to our advantage as a district in the way that we operate to not delay this process. And so I wanted to put this back on the table for our discussion, see what we can do this year before the term expires. And Ken, I'd like to, if you don't mind, lean on you a little bit to just talk through at a high level what you see as the key process steps would be if we were to take this up for this year, and what kind of support we think we would need to take that on.
Well, I think the first key process step is to define what we mean by the phrase "this year," because if we're going to make changes to the regional agreement, they have to be ratified at town meeting, right? And the towns set the warrants for their town meetings, I believe, on March 16th, right? Like that's our deadline for the budget. And Daryl, you can shake your head or not or whatever if you think that's correct.
Well, it's Ken, it is at the town meeting, the annual town meeting, or each town can have a special meeting just on that subject.
Right. So that's what I was saying. Yeah. So this year is kind of what I'm getting at, right? So, this year being for May town meetings, we have to get this done by March 16th. And I'll get to the rest of your question in a moment, Mike. If we, as Scott says, if it's at a town meeting, we're essentially then asking the towns to hold a special town meeting, which is probably not going to be super well received because those cost money, right? Especially in the COVID times of distancing. In terms of what we have to do versus what we have done in the past, and Christina, you and Scott might have some additions to this too, since you were here for some of these. We have to have a hearing, right? That's part of the legal process. We don't have to go to every town, but that's what we have done in the past, right? In the past, we have had a meeting with each of the individual towns to get their input into what we want. Obviously, there's no time for doing that by March 16th. I think we also process-wise have to have a discussion at the table ourselves and from administration about what administration's priorities are for the regional agreements. So we'd have to have administration priority, school committee priority, get input from the town somehow about what their priority is, then come together, write a new draft of whatever changes we'd want, and then have a hearing and have a vote after that hearing. And again, in the past, the way we collected town information was to go to each of the towns individually and have an in-person event. And, at some point we have to go past council too. The idea of, is this, whatever change we write, is something that's going to be acceptable? Because once we vote on it and once the towns vote on it, the commissioner actually has to accept it. It's not just automatic. So there's a lot of steps that seem to me to be challenging, to say the least, by March 16th to do right. But we would have to at least have a meeting to discuss it, have input from all the towns, have a hearing, and vote on it after a hearing. That would be the steps we'd have to take. And if we, are interested in potentially reducing the size of the committee, which might just be me, we'd have to do some exploration about models that are legal and would pass that. Well, our current model isn't actually legal. The commissioner basically told us that last time, but he accepted it anyway. In legal in terms of meeting the one person, one vote concept in law in Massachusetts, right? Because we're out of whack with our representation, the way our regional agreement is written. So I was not on either of those committees. So, but Scott, were you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I spoke to Joe Bartulis this afternoon at our last management meeting. It was asked if I ran this by him on the ramifications if we asked the towns to delay it for a year because we're in a pandemic. I had him review the regional agreement, and he gave me his synopsis on what we have to do and what we could do if we wanted to as a committee. But as Ken says, it's very tight time frame. And so if you look at the regional agreement, 14.1 is where it directs us on what we have to do. As Ken says, we have to have a review. And in the past 5 years ago, we had a ad hoc committee made to do that review. And we did go to the 5 towns where Bartulis saying that we can just hold a public meeting and have it say at the high school for all 5 towns, but we have to listen to them and get their input. And then number 3 on 14.1 is that we have to prepare written report to the select boards to the 5 towns on our review. And if we want to keep the regional agreement the same, we can say that, and that's and so it again, it has to go up for a vote of the 5 towns. It has to have a majority vote, and 4 of the 5 towns have to vote yes for it. So and then if we want to make any changes, again, it has to be in writing, and then the towns have to have either the town meeting or a special town, and they have to have the majority vote yes on it for the 5 towns. So if we even wanted to say, okay, we want to change the regional agreement to delay this process for 1 year, to say instead of voting on this every 5 years, to say, to bring it up to 6 years, we would have to go through all those steps.
Okay. Thank you.
Could I ask Scott a question through the chair, if that's okay, Mike? Did Attorney Bartulis weigh in at all about what it means by every 5 years? Like, is it within this calendar year we have to do it, or is it within 5 years of when the agreement was signed, or?
It's 5 years from when it first started back in the day, and it is up on June 30th, I believe, 21, that we need to get this all wrapped up. And we do need to follow the process. We can't not do anything. We do have to have the review, hold the public meeting, and prepare a written statement to the Board of Selectmen for the 5 towns.
And Scott, can I ask a question, Mike?
Go ahead.
So Scott, just to make sure I heard this correctly, because this would be quite a time saver, although it might be a hardship for people in towns, is you said that Attorney Bartulis said we could just have one, like a hearing or meeting where people could come from all towns to weigh in on the agreement.
Exactly. It is vague. How we read it through a few times, he did, and then this afternoon we read it, and he basically says that we do not have to go to the 5 towns. We can just hold one public meeting, invite all 5 towns, and we have to give them so many days in advance knowledge and stuff like that. And so we just need to present what we think the changes, if we want any changes, or if we want to keep it the same, and then listen to them, give them a vocal, that they can speak up and see if there's any changes. And then from that, then we have to put it in writing to the select boards. And My question was, in the beginning, if you look at section 14 itself, it uses the word shall, and legal speak, shall is must. So we have to review it every 5 years. We have to hold a meeting. So that's black and white.
Thank you for that. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I had just asked because, you know, about the year thing, because it's actually not signed until January 25th, 2017 from the commissioner. Of course, we did it at the May before that, but it just took him a long time to sign it. But
Right.
so that might just be.
And we even went down, say, I asked Joe Bartulos, I'm like, so say we asked all 5 towns, can we just sign off on a letter delaying this 1 year because we're in a pandemic? That would, we could be liable if one town fought and said, hey, we're not happy with this. So kind of that's where I was thinking we could go. But he read it, and he's the attorney, and he that word shall, I thought it was like, oh, we shall, but he's like, no, that you must do it. So
Any other comment?
so I'm sorry,
so
are we going to have like an ad hoc committee on this? Because
that's where I was going next, right? So, you know, it sounds like that is the first step here, and you know, whether it compensatory or you know, or just something we wanted to do. I think there was an inclination to try to do as best we could for this year. Sounds like we really do need to. So, what I'd do, I think we need a vote at the full school committee to form the committee. Would I certainly entertain a motion for this committee to recommend to the full committee that we form an ad hoc committee for review and update of the regional agreement.
So moved.
second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Just, I guess we'd want to make sure we charge the committee when we do with the ad hoc committee with what its task is. I know it's kind of in the title of the committee, but so that's just one thing. And secondly, you know, so in the guise of that, are we trying to say, are you doing this by March 16th? Like, is that our objective?
I think it's going to be up to the committee to review and advise on that, quite frankly. Okay. We're going to give them large latitude to, you know, to go through the process and advise on what can reasonably be done, whether it's March 16th and we try to get it on existing town meetings, or we have a dialogue with the town to say, look, you know, it is what it is. This is where we are, and we may need to ask you to do a special town meeting.
So, just looking at our bylaws real quick, I mean, do we want to jump on this even faster? We don't necessarily need the full committee to say we're going to create an ad hoc committee. The chair is allowed to just create and appoint ad hoc committees or ad hoc subcommittees.
That is true.
I'm sorry? Somebody said something. Maybe not.
I think Scott just said that is true.
Oh, okay.
I remember that in the past. I believe, Ken, didn't you create an ad hoc committee?
Yeah, I was just looking through I'm sure Adam has them in front of him, but just looking at the bylaws.
It's like third sentence of section 4. The chair may appoint additional ad hoc subcommittees as necessary.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm all for getting buy-in from the committee at large, but if we feel we need to jump on it in the next 2 days and appoint a chair and staff that subcommittee, then we may want to jump on it sooner. I guess it's a matter of, do we want to wait, 5 days? Just on the idea that I guess we would need to wait, then staff it, and then they need to set up a meeting, and that couldn't happen until next Thursday or Friday at the absolute soonest. And do we need to meet before then, before the 5th of March?
So I have no problem if it's clear in the bylaws, and in fact, what we could do is even revise the vote that we just took. Instead of advising the full committee, we can just say, we suggest the chair appoint this committee, and then I'm fine to start through that process.
So I can amend the motion type thing.
Yeah.
Is that what you'd like? So I'll amend the motion to be that this committee approve the appointment of an ad hoc subcommittee by the chair of the school committee to go through the regional agreement and figure out what they're going to do with that process. I made that really wordy, but we get the idea. I think
we can probably clean up the language.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. Any discussion on the amendment? Let's go real quick then to the roll. So we'll go to Ken.
Yes.
Scott.
Brown, yes.
Adam.
Yes.
Christina.
Smith, yes.
And Matt.
Lavoy, yes.
Dennis says yes. And then we'll go back to the regular motion, which is now amended. Any discussion on the regular motion to appoint this committee? If none, we'll go to vote. Ken?
Mills, yes.
Scott?
Brown, yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Christina?
Smith, yes.
Matt?
Lavoy, yes.
And Dennis, yes. All right. So in all transparency, Ken, I'm going to see if you be not to be on the spot, but kind enough to lead the charge with this endeavor, and we'll look to have representation from the 5 towns to round out this committee. And I'll put something out looking for interest to get you help. I did, in anticipation of us moving in this direction, ask Daryl and the administration to provide whatever support is needed from central office for us to be able to move as quickly as we're able.
Mike, can I just ask a question? It was about, Scott had mentioned something about a time, like notice to the towns for a hearing. What did we get a date? Did I miss, was there a date? How many days were suggested for notification?
Scott, do you know?
I'm trying to remember. I don't believe so. I believe it's common law, if we're going to be adding something to the town to vote on it, they need it so many days before. And so Bartulis mentioned that, and I could email them and get them the exact dates, but each town is different. And so there's so many days, Rebecca would probably know, there's so many days before that they need to add it to like the town warrant or whatever and put it in writing. So.
Just to interject, I've already texted Rebecca about that because I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With respect to your, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
I was going to say, with respect to the question you had asked, I'm willing to do it unless somebody here wants to stand up and volunteer. I mean, Scott has expertise, but he also has bargaining on his table. But if someone else, I'm willing to do it unless someone else wants to do it. I guess there's a lot of able people here.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't mind helping you, Ken.
Yeah.
Nobody's willing to take it, Ken. You're right. Thank you.
So
yeah, obviously,
Mike,
just to round out the Christina, your question. I mean, obviously one of the key factors here is developing a timeline on, what are the key things that need to happen and when. So, leave that to Ken and memorandum. Somebody else had something. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just, I guess, sort of addressing the question of when. And I'm not sure if I understood the question fully, but when did we need to hold that public hearing? Was that the question? So it sounds like...
Yeah, but in essence, yes.
Okay. I mean, so just looking at the regional agreement, it would be our public hearing. So I would assume that would follow our standard and open meeting law rules about posting a meeting for a hearing. So that does allow us to compress the time frame because we're just holding a hearing for the public, not necessarily for the town administrators and select boards. And then we report to the select boards. It probably behooves us to discuss it with the select boards as well. But I know we need to, again, move on this quickly. So I guess that concern is it's put on us to set that timeline. So that may help Ken.
Yeah, and Mike, if we could even get this committee appointed so that we could think about Daryl, having a 6 o'clock Monday before the main meeting could be a place to start if you can get it done that fast, Mike, because people would probably be available since they're already available at 7, regardless of who they are, unless there's another subcommittee meeting at that time.
Yeah, we'll do everything that we can to put. We just have to identify people and get it together. So we'll do that as quickly as we can.
And I did ask Patrick, because on 14.1 it says the committee must review. I asked him, can it be an ad hoc, and he says it's vague, and so I said we've done it in the past, and he's like, then that's fine. So
yeah, okay. Great. Any other questions, comments on regional agreement? If not, the last item that I had for us for tonight was really to start a discussion around the feasibility, the logistics of starting to bring, and I have no preconceptions of timing or anything like that, but it's really to start the discussion around allowing people to start to have some hybrid, people together in a meeting, while also allowing for people to join the meeting and participate remotely. And so I wanted to bring that forward as a discussion, again, with no preconceived notions about where or how fast or when we start that process. But, a related topic to that is it's my opinion that we're missing something by having public comment written to us and read to us, via this format. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts, but one thought, and I've heard this from a couple of different members, is to at least allow them to participate remotely and address us live, even if it's a register for a time to talk to us in public hearing, subject to the rules that we allow people to do so, make their address, and then jump off of the meeting. So I wanted to put that, again, doesn't have to work exactly that way, but wanted to put those thoughts out there to the group and ask the administration to talk a little bit about some of the feasibility and logistics around starting to look at having hybrid meetings. So Daryl or you or anybody from your team have some perspective on feasibility and logistics?
Sure. So I did have a conversation with Barry Sklar and also with Bill Biendo at the high school, just about really what opportunities we could make out of using either the media center or the auditorium or the black box theater. So those are 3 spaces that we could conceivably use. If we, and Bill and I talked about this at length today, if we have all 22 members plus members of the public, and we're still maintaining a 6-foot distance between everyone, the media center would be tough. That's really the reality. On top of the fact that it's set up right now for individual desks, moving everything on those days and then moving it back for the morning, it's a gargantuan task. But Bill didn't say, we can't do it, but he just said it's a huge task. The auditorium right now could be used, and we talked about maybe the concept of having, if people have been to the Holden Town meeting, you have the moderator up above with his or her support, and then down below you have the select board on one side, and on the other side you have the FinCom. We might be able to do something to that effect where we spread people out up on the stage and down below, and then have the audience maybe in the actual auditorium in the seats. Again, the only other issue there is we have band set up on the stage right now because that's the only place where we can really distance, in a way that is manageable. So that's a little challenging right now as well. But again, those are the two areas where we also have Holden Cable established. So I know Barry's going to talk to Jay from Holden Cable to see how that might work. We have to look at the microphones, because again, we have that small microphone system that we use in the media center that, again, runs off of one box, but then connects back to the main system. In the auditorium, we use a different system. So I'm not sure how that would work with individuals, especially all spread out. But we started the conversation. We are going to talk to Holden Cable to see some of the different options we might be able to tap into. The other thing that we'll have to think about is if there's a model where we say, okay, it's in person and remote for some members, how that hybrid piece might work. What might we do for that? Do we have a video and a screen set up so that we can see the members at home? Again, because they'll be able to see us. I'm not sure what the delay might be if they're watching on Holden Cable versus doing a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet. So those are things that again, I think they're all ultimately doable, but it will just we would really want to make sure that we have it all kind of laid out cleanly beforehand.
Daryl, if I could just add, I think for a moment we might need to think a little bit about the student safety and the staff safety. So from my perspective, if I use that lens, I would say the auditorium is more likely where we would be able to hold this meeting, because after we leave the building, that's got to be fogged. That area has to be fogged because we're bringing people in from the outside. That includes school committee members. So we'd have to fog that area. If we stayed off of the stage and somehow used where the rest of the auditorium is, that would protect that area from getting fogged. They can come in the morning early when the first class starts. That would be protected. So that would be just my 2 cents there. We got to kind of, I think, under the current situation, keep that in mind as well as students and staff safety.
Any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, just a question. So, I mean, under the current, I don't know what the current meeting guidelines are for numbers of people that can gather in public spaces. I know there's that option, like you said, about like a hybrid, a remote participation and in person for public bodies. But I'm wondering what is to be gained in a space like the auditorium of where I wouldn't be able to see, I would have to face forward. I wouldn't be able to see, as Daryl pointed out, people speaking, unlike if this were pre-COVID, we're sitting around a table and can see the members. So what is to be gained by the in-person meeting besides battling the hypocrisy of asking teachers to come into a building, which we all see. We're asking our teachers and staff to come into buildings and we're not going in. But I don't know how the meeting, I feel like it's going to be a very challenging situation to hear, to see, to even have a place to put my papers. I'm wondering if the cafeteria, I know this isn't set up for cable access TV, but the cafeteria, we might be able to space out in a way in which we could physically see one another from 30 feet away. But that's not set up for taping. Just the auditorium seems really difficult to have a meeting it would be similar or to what we're doing here, but at least I can see you. And we'd all be masked, which is also another complication in being able to hear what people are saying. Being someone who goes into a building every day, double masked and speaks, it's very difficult without I wear a headset so people can hear me. So I don't know.
One question sorry. One question I don't know the answer for.
I don't know, Christine, if you were looking for, if you know, I can attempt to give you an answer. I think number one, that's part of why we're having this discussion. Number two, I think in my mind, I think we're asking the administration to look at the feasibility of whether or not, if the committee desires to do this, look at the feasibility of having some type of hybrid meeting set up for us, where we could gain by being in the room, being able to see each other, and also have the participation of those people who wish to participate remotely. And I think that part of the challenge is to identify whether or not an opportunity exists and under what conditions, so that, for example, if there are limitations around the number of people, you know, we can do it so long as we have no more than 12 people in this kind of configuration, with access to cable and a screen, and you know, we continue to have the public join us remotely, for example, making that up. That's the kind of feedback that I would hope that we can understand from the administration, who's going to know the logistics of that building better than I do. Ken, I think you had something?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just a question, and I was trying to see if I could find my own answer, but if we are hybrid, and this is just a technical question that maybe can be looked into, what is the influence on quorum? So I know when we're all remote, quorum is just quorum, but if we're hybrid, does quorum have to, because in the old rules, right, you could have remote participation, but they didn't count to quorum. So I didn't know if we fall back into that, we may have a hard time ever getting quorum for a meeting if members choose for whatever reason not to come in person.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I would guess that if we're allowed to count remote participation and quorum through that this is in effect an extension of remote participation. But you know, perhaps that's something that Glenn Klucher's group can help us answer.
Yeah, I can, if you'd like, Mike, I can reach out to either Glenn or MASS on that as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
To your general question, Mike, I do think it's important that we think about this. I don't want to put people's safety and just make trouble. Like if we're making trouble for the schools, I don't want to do that. I do think we should make some effort, though, as Christina said. You know, we're asking our teachers to be in the buildings, and to the extent that we're not putting people in danger unduly, it seems like we should make an attempt. People meeting face to face, I think there's a interaction and a civility that is sometimes lost, and when people are 2 inches tall on the screen.
I think there definitely is an advantage to being in person. It's just there are a lot of challenges that are posed when we're having 5-hour meetings, 6-hour meetings. And so we really need to think carefully about the location. Your other question, Mike, about public participation, I think that is, I mean, obviously we think it's valuable and we don't have to have it, but we have it as part of our bylaws, and it is vital to the work of the committee. So somehow, some way, that's definitely should feel like that should be the first priority. And then the second priority should be seeing if we could possibly do some kind of hybrid. But the public participation component, you've you guys have mentioned some ideas. I agree with you that I'd love to hear public comment in the public's voice and not in having it read. It does lose, you lose the person's passion or some of their message. I think we need to stick with our bylaws of the 3 minutes though, or whatever it is, and 20 minutes for that conversation unless we feel it needs to go longer. Because we've been in meetings, as you guys have all been there with me, where it's been an hour of public comment, and it's not that the public's comments aren't important, but we have business to attend to as well. So I think letting people know ahead of time, this is it, it's 3 minutes, we go 20 minutes, and then we have public comment again at the end of the meeting, if you would like to stick around or come back, that's important too.
And if we do go forward with the hybrid, I had in the past month 2 meetings with Verizon. First meeting, it was somewhat hybrid. They did not have the technology set up. It was an awful meeting. They learned from that. Verizon's a $1 billion company. They spent it on the next one we had last week. All the technology, everybody could hear everybody. The first meeting, it was pretty much a disaster. We could not hear, we could not see some people. We all had to stay 6 feet apart or more. And the room was just not set up with the audio and the video for the upper brass of Verizon to speak from Texas. We could not hear them. And so my only fear is if we go down this path, I don't know if the district has that kind of technology that will make it the quality of a meeting we're looking for.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Adam?
Yeah. So my only thought on having the public's voice actually heard is this is something Ken needs to figure out soon for the regional agreement. So we'll just do whatever he does. I say that a little flippantly, but I mean, really looking at it, in all seriousness, as part of the regional agreement hearing, we need to allow the public to provide their input on that hearing. So, however we do that, whether it's through submitting a letter or through joining something like this, through a public thing where we let them in from a waiting room and then they need to leave after that. That is something we do need to figure out pretty soon. And, I think it is a very good idea to incorporate it into our general meetings for public hearing, because it's true. I mean, you lose what the real essence of what the person is saying by someone else reading it, and either they're missing the intonation or they just may not get the gist of it until they're already through it, and then that could change how you would have read it. It's that essence of what you're saying, whether you disagree with what they're going to say or not. That the purpose of allowing a public hearing is to hear what the public feels and believes, and what they want to say. And I do think we should allow them to say that.
No, I agree. I think that going forward, if we want the public to speak in their own words, we should have a portal or something on Google Meets or something that they can hop on, read whatever they want, and then hop off.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I know I know Megan was concerned about the Zoom bombing or Google Meet bombing kind of thing, which I think was part of what she had said why she wasn't allowing that. But we do at where I work, we have a Zoom. I know we've talked before about how costly Zoom is, but we do have a subscription to that, and they do it in a webinar type format or something and allow the people to come in, and then they put them out once they're done with their public comment. I don't know if they sign up in advance or how they do that, but that's how they've gotten the public to speak. With Google, you can always do that live streaming that we're doing anyway. And people that want to speak, maybe just, even if it's just right before the meeting, they've logged in and there's a certain time that they do it by, just like they would at the regular meeting. Rebecca would go up at a certain point and say like, okay, that's it for logging on, and then people can participate. What's interesting with Adam's comment about what Ken would do, I was thinking the public hearing would be in the auditorium. I don't know why, in the auditorium, and people would come. Maybe it's just my old school thinking. And so I didn't even really think about that challenge when we were talking.
I did the same thing, Christina, with Bartulis this afternoon. I'm thinking, oh, we'll be at the high school. I asked him that, can we have it at one meeting? He said yes. And so I just thought of a Holden Town meeting, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I did have a very preliminary conversation with Barry Sklar just around the notion of pre-registering and, giving people access right before the meeting, getting them off, having somebody moderate that process. And I don't think it's, it's not rocket science. So I think that, there seems to be some concurrence that that's probably the right direction for us to go. And, we'll look to make that change if we can make it effective for our meeting on Monday.
Mike, can I add something to that?
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, because when we think about what life was like pre-COVID, right? There was a sign-up sheet at the meeting to sign up for public comment, and Rebecca would check that, who signed up for it. So it's always been expected that somebody would sign up at some point in advance of not just show up and expect to go to the podium. Mm-hmm. So the question really is, what's the easiest way to do that? We have a form already designed. I looked the other day on the website, and it looked like it was turned off on the public comment section, and it looked like nobody could access it if they wanted to sign up. But my feeling would be that's a mechanism perhaps to get somebody to initially sign up. But then there are tools out there like a Sign Up Genius or something where you could actually designate 3-minute slots and just somebody manages that. It doesn't have to be the person who's signing up. There could be somebody who says, we have 5 people who signed up, here are the slots, and then there's a communication that goes back out to those individuals that have signed up with an email address and said, here's the link. What we have to be cognizant about is being diligent of when that starts and when that ends, so we can continue on with our business. And I think that it is feasible and manageable in that capacity if we just kind of break it down to the basic elements.
Yeah, my thinking is that this is not terribly difficult. I think there's a lot of different ways to do it effectively and to mitigate risk about, people doing unintended things. So we'll look to roll that out. I mean, the forum, my understanding is that the forum to submit comments is only active, right before meetings for a certain period of time. I'm not sure I know exactly what that is, but the point here is that we would create an opportunity for people to pre-register to be able to address the committee in advance, and I don't see any reason why we would, take that down or make that inactive in any way, at least, from my perspective. Mary, you had your hand raised?
I do. The only other thing was maybe the forms are good to keep, because I know after we would speak, Rebecca would always keep a hard copy for the minutes. So I don't know if that's something you would want to think about, because that way there would be the written comments and the verbal comments.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's an option, on the registration form to submit a written copy of your comments for the record, something like that. So that's a good point. Anything else on hybrid meetings or public hearing? Brendan, did I see your hand raised?
That's me. Yeah. Just one idea that I heard another district doing. Mm-hmm. Basically, a voicemail line. You call in, public comment is calling in, and it's limited. So it's basically like you have 3 minutes to leave your voicemail. And I was texting with Barry behind the scenes here. He thinks it might be possible to do that, where there would be screening. I mean, you can listen to them prior to them being broadcast. That's just another way that maybe this could work. And I don't remember where I heard that they're doing this, but it is possible to do it that way, and it would be people's voice. So just another way that people could contribute, maybe.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I mean, I think there's probably a number of different ways that we could address it. Again, my perspective is that we try to allow people to address us in real time, and that would mean we give them access to come on and say what they need to say, and if unless there's any real objection to that or different thinking, perhaps that's the route that's what we try. And if that doesn't work, we'll go back and recalibrate and iterate on it. Any other thoughts, comments, discussion? No. That's all I have for tonight. I know that we're going to have some things to talk about on Monday, and the agenda should be coming out, should be posted sometime tomorrow. But the key things are that we have listed under the superintendent's report is again, a facilitated discussion on budget priority, some discussion around a plan for bringing back students in person more this year. I know that there's been a lot of discussion around aspirations that the commissioner has, so that'll be folded into that topic. And then what's the going in model for next year as kind of our key three discussions. And if we can have some robust discussion on that, I think we'll have a pretty full meeting. That's all that I have. If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And then we'll go through the votes. So Ken?
Mills, yes.
Scott?
Brown, yes.
Adam?
Adam, yes.
Christina?
Smith, yes.
Matt?
Lavoy, yes.
And Dennis, yes. Our meeting's adjourned. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.